Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. A core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I will be your host. Today's guest is Hilary Webb. Hilary Webb has a Ph.D. She's an anthropologist, author, and the former managing editor of Anthropology of Consciousness, the peer-reviewed journal of the Society for Anthropology of Consciousness. She also served as a research director of the Monroe Institute. Webb earned a Ph.D. in psychology from Saybrook University in 2009, during which time she conducted research in the psychological experience of Yanantin, or complementary opposites, as a basis of the indigenous Peruvian worldview, and a master's degree in consciousness studies, specializing in the philosophy of mind from Goddard College in 2006. She's the author of Yanantin and Masantin in the Andean World, also Traveling Between Worlds, and Exploring Shamanism. Yanantin and Masantin in the Andean World is an eloquently written autoethnography in which researcher Hilary S. Webb seeks to understand the indigenous Andean concepts of Yanantin, or complementary opposites. It claims that polarities of existence such as male, female, dark, light, inner, outer are independent and essential part of a harmonious whole. Webb embarks on a personal journey of understanding the Yanantin worldview of complementary duality through participant observation and reflection on her individual experience. Her investigation is a thoughtful, careful, and rich analysis of the variety of ways in which cultures make meaning of the world around them, and how deeply attached we become to our own culturally imposed meaning-making strategies. Hilary, it's such an honor to have you on this show today. This is a subject that truly fascinates me.
Me too. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, thank you. So we live here in the Western world, and we have our worldview, and we think that this is how everything exists, and this is the best way of doing things, and this is the best way of viewing life. And obviously, you've had the opportunity to see other cultures and where they don't have that view of life. And Can you explain a little bit why did that appeal to you, and what were some of the kind of major, I know it's a big question, but some of the kind of main differences that you saw from our worldview versus the Andean worldview?
Yeah, a great question. There are so many. My interest in anthropology really does have to do with us becoming very sort of habitual in our thinking, and I love the practice of going around the world and finding out how people live differently than we do. Because what I found is that very often a problem, quote unquote, that we in our culture we see as insurmountable. If you go to another culture, either they have an easy fix for it, or for them it's not a problem whatsoever. So for me, that's just been the really exciting thing. And I think shamanism in particular tends to ascribe to a certain worldview that's quite different than the Western worldview. So, one of the main things, one of the books that I wrote, Traveling Between the Worlds, it's a compilation of conversations with people who have written and teach about shamanism around the world. And one of the things I really picked up on as I was interviewing all these shamans and teachers was the fact that a recurring theme was this idea of complementary opposites. And that, this idea that things like dark, light, inner, outer are not so far apart as we think. So probably I was beginning my studies down in Peru in the early 2000s, and I was sitting at in a despacho ceremony with an Andean, a Peruvian shaman, and he was. If anybody isn't familiar with the despacho ceremony, basically there's a piece of paper, and the shaman is placing different items on this paper and creating this mandala. So you've got rose petals, and you've got seeds, and you've got confetti, and in the middle he placed this little figurine that was split half down the middle. One side was yellow, the other side was pink, and he said, "This is Yanantine, complementary opposites." And there was something about that phrase, complementary opposites, that just really grabbed me, and it was one of those moments where I just heard this thing that resonated so deeply, although I wasn't really sure why that was. And the phrase complementary opposites kept with me for years after that. And I did my master's degree at Goddard College, looking at different psycho-spiritual philosophical traditions that see the world as a harmonious whole rather than a battle. And then when I went on to do my PhD work, I decided to do it on this concept of Yanantine. And just to sort of give a little bit of an idea, so the indigenous model, I would describe it as a complementary dualism. In fact, that's one of when scholars are researching the indigenous Peruvian or people of the Andes, one of the things that's most noted is that they ascribe to the complementary dualism, with the sense that, for example, in the Western world, we have this belief from way, way back that the opposites of existence are in a battle with one another, that one has to overcome or usurp the other in order to survive, and that good must overcome evil, and one over the inner over outer. And what was really beautiful is what I came to learn about the indigenous Peruvian model was that rather than seeing existence as a battle, they see it as a dance. And I spent several years traveling back and forth from the United States down to Peru to have an experience of Yanantine, which is complementary opposites.
Yeah, because we're in the Western world, we're looked upon, like you're saying, it's a battle all the time. Good is good and bad is bad. Light is good, dark is bad, and wealthy is good, poor bad. So you always look upon things that you want to attract and things that you want to repel. And so that way you create a certain split and a separation within yourself and also within your community. And that, this complementary opposites, that becomes a very powerful notion. And to have that worldview instead.
Yes, beautifully said. And I do think, if we go through the world seeing life and our relationships as a battle, we have such anxiety issues in this country and in the Western world. And, when you think about it in that way, if we're walking around on the high alert of, our world, our daily life, our daily interactions are a battle, why wouldn't we feel anxious all the time?
Yeah, exactly, because we always are then at war within ourselves. I mean, it's the same emotions within us. We have anger, that's considered bad. So then we're creating all these repressed emotions and causing then disease instead of then welcoming, all different aspects of reality.
Right.
So how do they view then this? Obviously one rather be wealthy than poor, for instance. I mean, so how do they view misfortune and disease? How does that play a role in their existence?
Yeah. Well, I would say, I can't speak for every shaman around the world, nor even every shaman in Peru, which is what I'm most familiar with. But in general, there is a sense that everything is a teacher. A very interesting comment that was made to me is, I got into a conversation with Amato, one of the shamans down there, about this idea of curses. And he said, if somebody curses you, you should thank them because they've just given you free energy that you can use as you need to in your own life. And to me, that was such an interesting way of looking at it because we automatically think that a curse is, going to deplete us. It's going to, which it can, if we allow that negative, let's say, energy in, it can deplete us. It can cause us issues. But the way he was looking at it was these challenges that we have, whether it be a curse or a disease or, fill in the blank, are an opportunity to not so much integrate, but allow them to become healing and become strength for ourselves, for our communities, for the good of the planet.
That's fascinating. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I am here. We're talking about shamanism and complementary dualism with Hillary Webb. Right back. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Hillary Webb. We're discussing complementary dualism and shamanism. So, one of the things that I see a lot with my patients is that they come then with a pretty severe health conditions, let's say cancer, and we're all afraid of it. It's something we all want to avoid. But at the end of the day, when they've gone through this journey, they recognize that this cancer has become their best healer, their best. It really opened them up then for this other aspects of their life that needed healing. So it's almost like you were talking about this curse, that it created a some kind of a polarity, that the curse and obviously create then that complementary opposite, that you can then allow to be drawn into your life at the same time. Is that my understanding that he was talking about?
Yeah, I think that wasn't directly what he was referring to, but I think it fits nonetheless, and I think it's a great way to sort of translate it into disease and healing and what we can find from that. One of the things I really got excited about as I was sort of talking to my shaman friends down there, they were unpacking what this idea of Yanantine really means. So we often use the word just Yanantine, but very often it's used Yanantine-Masintine. And if you think about it, Yanantine is the noun and Masintine is the verb. So you have Yanantine is these complementary opposites. So let's say sickness and health. And Masintine is the verb. It's the action of these two things dancing with one another. And the way it was explained to me is that in order to take a relationship of any two opposites, there's this 4-stage dance that they go through. So it starts off with what's called the first stage is Tupai, the meeting. There's Tinkwi, the testing of boundaries. There's Take, the union. And there's Truhi, the separation. So, I'd be interested to, hear your reflections coming from somebody who's seeing people, for example, with cancer. You have Tupai, the meeting. It's this initial encounter between the Yanantine pair. It's, okay, I was healthy yesterday, but now I'm sick. I'm now meeting this new reality and this new energy that I'm engaging with. And then the next phase is the Tinkwi, which is what I think we Westerners are most familiar with. This is our battle mentality. So the Tinkwi is it's the battle between the Yanantine pair, but a necessary battle. So we tend to see battles as very all across the board negative, but really what it is testing of boundaries. It's learning what I'm made of, what you're made of, how we work together, who we are together. And so as it was explained to me, this Tinkwi stage, the second stage, is sort of both the lovemaking and the violence. It's this opportunity to find out where I begin and where you end. And, of course, the I and the you, you can fill in the blank with any two sets of opposites. And then you've got the third stage, which is Take, the union. And that's when the boundaries have been established, the struggle has ceased, and there is harmony between the two opposites. And then, of course, the fourth stage is called Truhi, and that gets a little more esoteric. It's when it's described to me as loving at the level of the soul. And it's the fourth and final stage, and it's this idea that it's the capacity to be yourself again after this engagement, and inevitably a Yanantine pair will become separated. But if you've gone through these four stages, you can be separated from this Yanantine pair or your complementary opposite, but that opposite will always be with you and will always be able to give you strength.
Yeah,
so I thought that was a really lovely way of showing how, we tend to get in the Western world, because of our antagonistic dualism model, we tend to get stuck in the tinkwi, whereas the Peruvians are able to move it to the dance stage and then beyond the dance stage to this sort of oneness where you are informed by the experience in a way that you will never be without it.
So it's almost like, the meeting, you're right. You have that first interaction, like an individual just found out they have cancer, they have, lupus or whatever it may be. And then, the boundaries, is where, or that battle is where you're just trying to kind of figure out, integrate this energy and finding, how does, it's just like a married couple that, now they're you have the male, female, and they're trying to figure out each other, try to integrate, I like this, I don't like that. And then you find a balance within that relationship. And it would be with the same, any kind of ailments would be the same thing. After the discovery, you have to find a new balance, with what you've just found out, and create then a new harmonious situation. Instead of fighting this, you need to integrate that energy and then find a new balance with that new energy. And then with that, you can transcend then into that next level, loving at the level of soul, where you have the integration of the new information and the new relationship that you developed with the new meeting, whether it's an individual or knowledge or health condition or whatever it may be. So that's just fascinating. How it's like you're transcending. You're meeting a new type of energy. You're kind of playing with it. You're creating harmony with it, and then you're ascending from it in a way.
Yes, exactly. And the anxiety comes in that tinkwi stage when we are forced to face this other and establish our boundaries, which is, never comfortable. But for me, when I begin to look at it through this 4-stage model, I don't take it so personally. So if my husband and I are having, an argument about something that we see things differently, I don't take it personally, and I see it as an opportunity to have more energy in our relationship to bring us to the next level. And of course, nothing is linear, so these stages are always repeating themselves and spiraling around. And so it's a very interesting process. And obviously, you could take it to levels of politics, which is frankly harder for me just because, I like to keep it sort of more on the individual level. And it's the bigger you go, the harder it gets to kind of play with. But nonetheless, it's a very interesting thought experiment looking at any kind of interaction as part of a necessary phase.
And that seems to be, it's that dance. Recognizing that it's a dance, and sometimes learning a new dance is very uncomfortable, and you feel weird, and you don't know how to move with this other individual, and being okay with being uncomfortable. The key is not to avoid discomfort or avoid imbalance. When you bring in something new, the key is to develop and become more and grow, and you can only grow by entering into these phases, of discomfort.
Precisely. Yeah. Of course, it's always easier to say than to do when you're in the discomfort.
Dang it.
But that's why, again, it's night out, right?
Exactly.
But that's why it is nice to have sort of at least a mental map, because we aren't in our culture given this kind of map of, how to conceive of our daily interactions. So it's been quite profound for me to work with these guys and ladies down in Peru and just get a sense of how they live and think. And it's been quite transformative for me.
And I'm curious. So they have. This seems to be then a common. This is a powerful principle that runs through their whole belief system. But how do they truly view the world? How do they feel it was created? How is healing taking place? Where did they go? Who are they in this piece, in this puzzle of existence? Well,
to answer the very first thing you asked, I think you'd asked something about creation and where do they come from. And Amato, the shaman I worked with, told me a very beautiful thing. He said, we don't have a creation story because creation is happening every day. And I thought that was just so beautiful. It's much less of a linear, what we would call a teleological view of existence. So teleological meaning we're on a direct path to some sort of absolute final end. And somebody, when I was down there, said to me, if you want to understand the mentality of the Andes, it's a circle, not a line. And then that was refined further by Amato, who said, you know what, it's actually both a circle and a line. So, there is a sort of linear direction. That's why we can throw the coca leaves and see the future. But it's also an existence of repetition and of seeing certain patterns. So he said, it's not quite a line, it's not quite a circle. He's like, I call it a spiral, which is sort of encompasses both. So it's not a circle where you're kind of going through the same path over and over again ad infinitum in a sort of Groundhog Day sort of loop. It's always evolving, but always circling back on itself at the same time. Not always back to the same place, but maybe something similar. And again, this is how you come back to the four stages of moving from antagonism to complementarity. It's this always looping process that happens over and over again. I think we always want to wake up one day and be completely enlightened and be completely healthy, and then it's frustrating when that doesn't happen. So there again is a wonderful model of existence, of things, patterns repeating itself, but in different ways. And each time it repeats, you're able to handle it better because you've been there before, or at least somewhere like it.
Yeah, exactly. You know the process already. And we're going to take a quick break. You're here with Hillary Webb and Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. We're chatting a little bit about shamanism and healing in that world. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm here with Hillary Webb. She's an anthropologist, author. She's written 3 books. Her latest, Yanantin and Masintin in the Andean World. She's also written Traveling Between Worlds and Exploring Shamanism. So just kind of making that point again that you made. Their existence seems to be circular, but at the same time as it's circular, it becomes, there's some kind of trajectory to it, some kind of evolution along with it. But, it's the same process, and they get comfortable with the process, and they get comfortable with that, antagonism, or where, you're fighting for your boundaries, and knowing that that's necessary, and you don't try to avoid it, because if you avoid it, then you're not able to move through it. So yes, and not avoiding it is key, and not trying to take yourself out of the equation, because we're all part of this creation and we're all doing our bit within it. For example, I think there, in some spiritual traditions, there's a sense that, okay, well, God or spirit or, fill in the blank will take care of these issues, so I don't need to do anything. And one could say, if you believe in spirit, that there's this idea spirit will handle all. And it was when I was talking to, for example, Amato and Juan Luis, who's another shaman who I worked with, about this idea of good versus evil.
it was interesting because, they sort of have more of gray area in terms of we have very, good with a capital G and evil with a capital E, and theirs is much more fluid. They see the devil, quote unquote, as a trickster energy. And so, coming from a Western viewpoint, I said to them, so if you saw something bad or evil happen, would you try to stop it, or would you just assume that spirit is going to take care of it? And they said, of course we would try to stop it. Absolutely. So when I talk to people about this idea of complementary opposites, that is often a question that comes up, is that, or if you're acting as everything's a dance and everything has a purpose, how do you right the wrongs of the world? Well, you follow your heart and you still do exactly what you feel compelled and called to do, to, insert yourself in the process to do what you feel is right. Because we don't take ourselves out of the equation. We are part of this. And
so we're part of the dance, and we need to we need to participate in the dance. Otherwise, we're taking ourselves out of creation in a way.
Exactly.
So how? What is their relationship then with spirit, with creator, with how do they view themselves in relationship to that?
Yeah. Well, that is a huge cosmological question. I would say in the mountains of Peru, where I did my field work, they have a very strong connection to the Apus, which are the mountains. And the Apus are spirits that are always watching. And it's a reciprocal relationship. So it's not so much that one, it's not like a God figure where you sort of have this creative force that is sort of like the big daddy, the big sky daddy kind of feel. This is more a reciprocal relationship. And so they engage with the spirits back and forth because the spirits help us heal and we help the spirits heal in the way that they need. And that process is called Aini, which means, what does that mean? It's a reciprocity. Yeah, one way of putting it is today for you, tomorrow for me. So Aini and reciprocity with the spirits is huge. So they'll leave food out for the spirits. And the despacho ceremony, for example, that I referred to earlier with the mandala made out of rose petals and seeds and confetti and all that, is an offering to the earth. So they are constantly feeding the earth and feeding the spirits so that the spirits will in turn feed us.
And the spirit, that's something that is all-encompassing, or these different entities, or how?
Well, I would say at least the way it's practically worked is they tend to refer to them as individual spirits. Now, if you were to ask them that question, it's very possible they would say, well, in the end, it's all a oneness. But I've noticed that shamanism differs from a lot of the other mystical traditions in that it's much less interested in the one and the one and all. I think a lot of other religious traditions are looking for the singularity, are looking for the one thing that encompasses everything. Whereas in shamanic traditions, it tends more to be a focus on the earth, on day to day. All the practices are geared toward, can you grow corn with it? Are you able to feed your family? And so I think it's much more, the relationship is much more one of multiplicity in terms of spirits rather than some oneness.
Mm-hmm. And so so you have the spiritual world, and then obviously you have the mundane world, the practical day-to-day, and then the shaman is the individual that helps these people, to interact then with the spirit world. So how do you become a shaman? What does being a shaman look like?
Well, becoming a shaman is, I think, different for every single shaman. Many of them have an illness at a young age that alerts them to, or alerts their community to the fact that, this might be a neophyte shaman or a shaman to be. Amato, my primary research partner, was struck by lightning 3 times, which is in the Peruvian tradition, that's sort of the signal of, this is the one. This is the kid that's going to be the shaman. And Amado's grandfather was although he was the shaman of the village, although at the time, shamanism was not well respected because of the influence of Catholicism. It was considered something dark and evil. So Amado's grandfather, was a practicing shaman, but kind of kept it under the radar, more as a healer rather than a shaman.
And so
the
shaman, I mean, once they can understand that this is who they are, I mean, do they usually go on some kind of a journey or something to connect with spirit more? Or, I mean, you always have that kind of shaman experience that initiates them in some fashion. Yes,
absolutely. And I know Amado, worked for years with his grandfather. And one of their primary healing tools, at least how they worked with me, is the San Pedro cactus, which is a mescaline-based cactus. And I had a funny experience when I first showed up in Peru to do this work with Yanantin. I met with Amado, and we sat down in the plaza, and I pulled out my notebook and my pen, and I said, "So can I interview you about this concept of Yanantin?" And he smiled, and he kind of laughed, and he said, "Absolutely, but may I suggest that you download it from the cosmos instead?" And of course, I went, "What?" But how do I cite that? And so what he explained to me was that he was suggesting that I go into ceremony with him, using, drinking some of the San Pedro medicine. And, I thought about it for a little while because I had had some experiences with psychedelic medicines before, but never in this context. And finally I said, all right, I'm in. And I had a quite profound set of journeys, working in tandem with the spirit of San Pedro, which I had a very profound Yanantin experience. And so the healing spirits that Amado primarily works with are, I would say, the Apus, which are the mountain spirits, and also the spirits of San Pedro.
And so, we're going to take a little quick break. But do you mind sharing when we come back a little bit about your experience, or is it too personal?
Yes, absolutely. Nope, I'd be happy to.
Okay, wonderful. We'll be right back. You're here listening to HealthMade Radio, and I'm here with Hilary Webb. She's an anthropologist and author. Right back. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I'm here with author Hilary Webb. She wrote the book Yanantin and Masintin in the Andean World, as well as Traveling Between Worlds and Exploring Shamanism. So I'm very curious about what you experience. You get to experience a little bit of the medicine. You had a journey, and the information about Yanantin, I guess, get downloaded to you from Cosmos.
Yeah, isn't that a great phrase? I find it funny that our technological language is being used to sort of transmit some of these ideas, which I get a kick out of. Yeah. But yeah. So Amado suggested that instead of thinking about Yanantin intellectually, which would only get me so far, that I, like you said, download it from the cosmos. So, and by that he meant going into ceremony with the San Pedro cactus. The San Pedro cactus being a mescaline-based plant that is used all over Peru for ceremonies such as this. So a small group of us, because me and two other shamans, went into the mountains one night, and we did a ceremony calling in the spirits. And we were on top of a mountain, and they gave me my cup of San Pedro, then followed by another one. And I laid back in my sleeping bag, and I just, of course, there you are up on the mountains. There's no light pollution. It's just a dome of stars, just this beautiful crystal expanse of the universe you're being surrounded by. And so I lay there for a while waiting for the San Pedro to take effect, and then it did. And as I'm looking up at the stars, suddenly the stars begin to move. They start to dance. And I thought to myself, well, no, that's just not possible. That's the San Pedro, because the stars can never move. They don't dance. They stay still. But nonetheless, the stars were dancing. They were moving. And so in my head, I've got sort of like this split, these two voices. The stars are moving, the stars aren't moving. The stars are moving, but the stars can never move. But the stars are moving, but they can't move, but they are. And so suddenly, in this moment, I thought, oh, this is Yanantin, two things that can be true at the same time, even though they seem like opposites. And in the book, I relate it to this idea. Many of your listeners may be familiar with Schrodinger's cat, which I won't go into all the details, but basically the idea that you've got a cat in a box that may be dead or may not be dead. You don't know until you lift the lid off the box to look at the cat. But before you lift the lid off the box, the cat is in a state of both being alive and dead all at the same time. Now, this concept had always sort of blown my mind, and I just didn't get it. But in this moment of seeing the stars both move and not move, I understood how two things could be true at the same time, two very opposite seeming things, alive, dead, alive, dead. And it's only when you lift the lid off the box that you see the cat, and the cat is perceived, and it is then either alive or dead, fixed. So there's this idea in quantum physics of the observer effect, that it's what we're looking at and what we're focusing on and what we're perceiving that is quote-unquote true at any given moment. So in our daily life, I think we're walking around with the objects of perception, and we have these automatic assumptions about whether they're alive or dead, whether they're moving or not moving, and we lock into that one idea and don't let go. And so it's just that, it's only that. But in this state of Yanantin that I got into working with the San Pedro, I was able to sort of dissolve that fixed mind and have an experience where two things were equally true at once.
That's amazing. Yeah, we're so used to, like you're saying, that there is an absolute truth. But in reality, it's not absolute, because you have many truths that exist at the same time, and it's like in quantum physics, like you're talking about, you have the law of probability, and so with that, they're talking about several dimensions, several existences that are unfolding at the same time, and it's the one that you give the most energy to that becomes. Right.
And that's a very interesting, I haven't really spent much time thinking about it in these terms, but in terms of patients with any sort of disease, there is a state in which you're both healthy and sick all at the same time. And what does that dance look like and feel like? Because parts of you might be sick, but other parts are healthy. So what's that dance? How does that dance evolve within each of us?
Exactly. I mean, you have, going back to cancer, you have certain cancers that take 30 years to develop. So, before that point, the individual was healthy, and then all of a sudden they're sick. So, and it depends. It's just like, we're talking about a particle, being both a material object as well as a frequency, as a light, quantum light, and it all depends on how you're viewing it. It depends on the observer.
Right.
So that's really that's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was really powerful.
Thank you.
So how, going then to health and disease, how does a shaman, if somebody comes to a shaman saying, I get pain, I have this wound, I have this headache, I have, whatever it may be, how does a shaman address that?
That's going to be different for every shaman. So there'll be some shamans, I would say each shaman has their specialty. So, for example, one shamaness that I worked with throws the coca leaf, and she looks at what is happening in this moment. And then she will start to arrange the coca leaves to a more favorable outcome for that patient, which I thought was interesting. So it's not just a diagnostic tool, but it's part of the healing remedy. And they will work with, they do the guinea pig healings where you poor guinea pig, but rub the guinea pig on the belly of the individual who's ill, and then you cut the guinea pig open and you find out what's going on in the guinea pig. They do a similar thing with raw eggs, rubbing a raw egg on the patient's body, cracking it open in a glass of water, seeing what's happening with the egg. So it's sort of microcosm, macrocosm. They use stones, for example. The stones are a big part of the healing ceremonies with many of the shamans that I worked with, feathers, basically calling in all the healing energies. And I think probably if I were to, I hate to condense all of their methodologies into a kind of system because I can't speak for all of them. But one of the interesting things that Amato was telling me about was the path to healing is really, they see there being three centers of the body. So you've got the snake energy, which is sort of in the abdomen, and it's like the root of your guts and your will. And then you've got the jaguar energy in your heart, which is your passion and your force with which you walk through life. And then there's the condor aspect, which is the mind aspect, and the spirit aspect, which is always looking at everything from above and seeing everything as a whole. And if I were to boil all your healing down, I would say it's creating a pure pathway from each of those three parts of the body so that you are equally able to work from the heart, the spirit, and the head, and the heart, and the guts, so that there are no blockages, so nothing is impeded, so you are able to walk lightly and gently in this fully present energetic state.
So it's kind of like when you're looking at the Eastern medicine. You have Chinese, you have Ayurvedic, you have all these old traditions. So it's still about making sure that there's a flow, that the different aspects of the individual is in balance. That you're not stuck in one area, but you're able to kind of move through that process. So it's almost like it's that aspect is repeated in the Andean world as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison, and it is so interesting. There is a consistency in terms of we need to learn to unblock ourselves. I once had a shaman said to me, the furthest journey you'll ever make is from your head to your heart. But once you get there, everything's worth it.
Yeah, and I think living in the Western world, we're so much in the head, and we tend to analyze things to death, so that we're not able to experience it through the heart, because it's these emotions, these feelings, these relationships that exist within the heart that makes it scary. It's unpleasant, and that's where we're stuck in that kind of boundaries area that we don't want to go into, the battle area.
Precisely. Yeah, which is why programs like yours are so important, to sort of get ideas flowing and get new options flowing, because I think many of us feel maybe not quite resonant with the classical Western model, and are looking for something that is more life positive and more life friendly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the modern medicine is amazing, but its foundation is on suppressing symptoms. I mean, to pretty much kind of stopping a process that is unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wonderful. And so with that, I mean, when you're talking your book then, in the traveling between worlds, I mean, that it almost means that they are then existing then in both these and the dualities at the same time. Is that, or is that more traveling between the spiritual and the physical world and being okay with that?
Oh, I think it can be all those things. I mean, I think when I titled this Traveling Between the Worlds, I was thinking of sort of the traditional definition of a shaman as a man or woman who can go into altered states of consciousness in order to access non-ordinary knowledge and healing power from the spirit realm. So there's a lot of journeying into the spirit realm through various means. So that's kind of what I implied by the traveling. But I think it's equally true that we are ourselves a solar system of worlds, and we all the shamans teach us, and we all need to learn how to travel to the different parts of ourselves to kind of clear out those blockages and to have good communication, within ourselves, within our communities. We all need to learn how to travel a little more freely and lightly and with less resistance, which is, again, easier to say than to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no.
But to make it a dance.
Yeah, and I love that picture and being okay, with that dance and being okay with discomfort and being okay with that we're here for a bigger reason than just be comfortable. Yeah, we
right.
That evolution and that partaking then of existence and reality instead of just kind of blocking our energy, locking ourselves up in a nice house with a nice job, and then what? So
right. And I think one of the things that's repeated in the book Yanantin and Masintin in the Andean world is there's a lot of laughter. So it's, as you mentioned, it's an autoethnography. So which means basically it's an ethnography of a certain cultural group and their philosophical ideas about the world, but it brings in my personal experience as a Westerner who's trying to integrate these particular ideas. So it's a lot of my journeys with these shamans, and there's a lot of laughter. And laughter is really one of the, as far as I'm concerned, the best way to unblock energies is to laugh and find people to laugh with.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have this science, psychoneuroimmunology, and they're adding endocrine with that as well. So it's just showing how our emotions impact all aspects of immune system, our hormonal system, of digestive system, detoxification, and like you're saying, laughter. It's people getting rid of cancer and severe health conditions simply just by increasing laughter. So that's huge. You can never underestimate that medicine.
It sure makes life sweeter.
Exactly. Whatever situation you're in, it always makes it better.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, I so appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing all your amazing experiences that you had. And this is, as I said, is something that fascinates me tremendously, other people's views on reality and healing. And I think it's by exploring these other aspects outside of our so-called comfort zone of thinking, that is how we're able to expand and become more adept in what we're doing, more adept at living, more adept at healing, more adept in relationship, and more adept as a civilization. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That is all for today. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. Health is what you make it. Remember to check us out at healthmade.co. Thank you very much.